Now we are going to continue to the presentation from our competition submissions. We'd like to welcome four speakers to deliver the presentation about their project from the proposer that were submitted to our global competition. But what we would like to do before moving on to the presentation, please let us give you a quick summary of our global competition. As you probably know that our global competition was launched last November and closed on the 29th of January. And the core objectives are to strengthen the monitoring and to enhance multiple narratives in the interpretation and presentation of World Heritage properties in danger or not by use of information technology. As can be seen in this word map, we have actually received a total of 36 letters of intention. These proposals, as you can see, that came from all the UNESCO regions. During our second meeting moving forward, which took place in February, the 9 shortlisted entries were actually announced. And today, as our co-convener Mario already mentioned in the introduction, the winners will be announced during the closing ceremony of this Globinar. So please stay tuned until the end. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. I'm very glad to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Anqi Cheng, from who will talk about the Wulingyuan nature cultural lenses, an AR-based World Heritage interpretation system. Ms. Cheng, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anqi Chen from Tongji Haste Heritage Landscape Conservation team. Next slide, please. Well, our team has interdisciplinary researchers and partners from World Heritage Site Management Department, academic institutions, industry representatives, nonprofit organizations, as well as local communities. Next slide, please. I'm going to present a proposal for an AR-based World Heritage interpreting system for Wulingyuan. And Wulingyuan Scenic and Historic Interest Area is nominated as World Natural Heritage for its spectacular landscape dominated by more than 3,000 narrow sandstone pillars and peaks, as well as a number of endangered plant and animal species. And while it is a World Natural Heritage with outstanding natural value, it locates within a heavily populated agricultural region with more than 2,000 years of human settlement history. And now there are 42 villages and more than 55,000 inhabitants, of which most are Tuja, Bai, and Miao ethnic minorities. And thus, how to coordinate community development and World Heritage conservation is an important issue. So as China's most well-known tourist destination, Wulingyuan receives approximately 10 to 20 million tourists every year, and which has brought big pressure to the protection management of the World Heritage. And besides, diversified tourists have put forward high requirements and expectations for the Wulingyuan interpretation. And the result of a survey shows that local communities and tourists have insufficient awareness of the value of World Heritage. Also, at the same time, current interpretation lacks the representations of the local cultural value, and the methods and tools need to be updated. So based on the above background and challenges, we put forward the project of Wulingyuan Natural Cultural Lens. It is a key concept at the different perspectives of seeing World Heritage. And also today's information technology have provided us with a series of lenses to obtain World Heritage information. And we aim to enhance the awareness of the World Heritage significance through cultural nature lenses. And to achieve the goal, the Wulingyuan Nature Cultural Lenses is an AR-based interpreting system comprises 3 components. First, a geodatabase. Second, an AR-based smartphone app, and a series of community engagement activities. And in order to construct the geodatabase, the multi-level values and the carriers are identified, not only the outstanding universal value, but the national, regional, and the local values are included in, which means the local community is one important information source for the database. Thus, the geodatabase comprises a comprehensive data of materials to be interpreted, covering natural beauty and biodiversity, cultural landscape, and cultural diversity. Well, then the geodatabase is constructed including 3 layers of data, and among them, landscape features and their related interpreting media is connected through heritage values. Based on the geodatabase, the AR app is designed with 4 main functions, which are an on-site or off-site world heritage tool based on AR experience, a series of AR tools interpreting the natural and the cultural values of world heritage, a reservation system for local guides and interpretation service, and a platform for live broadcast of community events and participation. And all functions aim to update interpretations as well as a rising awareness of world heritage among local communities. For example, through geology lens, tourists can see the geological revolution of the landscape in real time. Through art lens, tourists can not only appreciate the spectacular landscape in front of their eyes, but also the related art creation stories behind the works. And this is the historical religious lens, and people will get information about the religions of a temple and its history and related events. In Tuja lens, local Tuja people can show their life in World Heritage Site, as well as local intangible cultural heritage, such as handcrafting making through live broadcasting videos. Tourists will look into people's attachment to the land in World Heritage Site. The app can also be used off-site. For example, through history lens, people on any place surface can see an AR model of the history and the related landscape sites. Different forms of information, including figures, poems, videos, are added to make the online experience more interactive. Also, in an off-site mode, through animal lens, people can learn about representative animals of Wulingyuan with multiple media. Lens is not limited to visual sensory. The app provides more sensorial experience. For example, through sound lens, different sounds of nature, animal, and local people are recorded and presented, which enhance the understanding of the site with immersive environments. In all lenses, tourists can get oral interpretation service from local people. And tourists are also provided with chances to get deeper relationship with heritage sites and local people. For example, through agricultural lens, people can claim rice fields online and learn traditional farming knowledge from local farmers. After harvest, they can receive pollution-free agricultural products. And at the same time, local farmers manage the rice fields and update news to people. The app serves as a platform for community to share local knowledge, as well as promoting economic development of local communities. Above shows 8 scenarios of different lenses and what information users can get from them, as well as how local people participate in the interpretation process. And our proposal shows information technology is changing the way communities and tourists receive and create World Heritage information. It also creates a strong linkage between communities and World Heritage. And to conclude, the Wulingyuan Nature Cultural Lenses is an interpretation system of geodatabase, AR app, and arranged activities. The framework can be applied to other World Heritage sites, and we draw 4 important points to make the interpretation system more comprehensively and efficiently. First, understanding of the multi-level values of World Heritage is significant for information technology application. And second, innovative technologies application is the key. Third, different sites can establish unique lensing system according to World Heritage character and values. And last, local capacity buildings and local value protection are the ultimate goal of the World Heritage Conservation. Okay, next slide, please. And above are is our proposal for Wulingyuan World Natural Heritage. If you have any questions or have interest in our project, you can contact us with the information on the screen, and also you can write your questions on the board on the mirror.
Thank you very much, Andy, for your wonderful presentation and for sharing, expertise with us. I hope you actually will enjoy this amazing presentation. If you have any questions about this innovative, interpretation system, which would be, surely beneficial to raise awareness of the site, as well as to understand the multiple values in of the site in comprehensive and coherent way, in also collaboration with the communities. We would like to invite you to leave your comments or questions on our mirror board, please, and we will forward these comments to the presenters later. And Andy, you may wish to reply to those kind of comments later. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm moving to the next presentation. I'd like to invite Dr. Paul Rogers, the director and the co-founder of Planet Happiness, who will be speaking to us, Khumbu caretaker in Sagarmatha National Park in Nepal. Dr. Rogers, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Hello, everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm a tourism planner with 20 years experience advising local and national governments on tourism policy and planning issues, mainly in South and Southeast Asia. This Our World Heritage proposal focuses on Nepal's Sagarmatha National Park, which I visited for the first time more than 30 years ago. And it was the subject of my PhD, completed in 1997, that asked the question, what is ecotourism? And is the Sagarmatha National Park an example of ecotourism? The conclusion was it is an example of ecotourism, but not an especially strong example. At that time, the park and its buffer zone were suffering from growing deforestation and waste management issues, and the tourism system wasn't especially well managed. More recently, over the last 30 years, despite many nightmare media stories about calamities on the highest mountain in the world itself, I'm pleased to say more generally that the many issues I came across in my PhD studies are being effectively managed and addressed. And this is in no small part due to the work of the Himalayan Trust, our local partner proposing this project. Dr. Ming Manorbu, the CEO of the Himalayan Trust in Kathmandu, is unable to be with us today because he's in the mountains. The Trust has worked tirelessly to enable high levels of local engagement in all aspects of the park and the community's development, from reforestation and waste management programs to electrification through micro hydro, as well as quite profound health and schooling programs. Importantly, local engagement is encouraged, enabled and incentivized by the Nepal government's far-sighted and excellent buffer zone act and legislation that recycles especially tourism-related revenues to support local management systems. So today, besides the collapse of international tourism owing to the pandemic, it is climate change challenges that are among the greatest threats to the park, its ecosystems and communities. And once again, these issues can only be addressed and solved through community consultation and household engagement in decision-making and wider management systems. So our proposal is focused on extending and facilitating this local engagement, specifically by centering on conversations about individual, household, and community destination well-being. This is an approach that can be applied universally in any World Heritage site or tourism destination. It is a very intuitive approach that builds on growing global interest in the happiness and well-being agenda, that is being picked up by enlightened governments around the world. In this approach, the terms happiness, well-being, and quality of life have the same meaning and are used interchangeably. Next slide, please. So how does this approach work? This initiative is a destination partnership between the Himalayan Trust and Planet Happiness, which is a tourism and big data project focused on World Heritage sites. The project is a project of the Happiness Alliance, a non-profit registered in the US. Now, Planet Happiness partners with destinations to deploy the Happiness Index survey, an OECD recognized best practice approach to measuring individual, community, and destination well-being. The survey is available online. It measures individual well-being across 11 recognized domains. It's based upon Bhutan's approach to measuring well-being. The domains embrace, for example, sense of community, satisfaction with the quality of the local environment, access to lifelong learning, the arts and culture, and standard of living. We have also introduced questions on tourism that align with the way tourism is positioned in the UN SDGs. Do people think the level of visitation to the heritage site is too high, too low? To what extent are jobs being created for local people? And does it celebrate and revitalize local culture and the environment? Questions specific to local development issues and challenges, such as those on the last slide, are also added. And so this approach allows for rich and comprehensive baseline and ongoing data to be gathered and used to inform evidence-based decision-making, as well as spark stakeholder conversations about well-being, conservation, and sustainability issues. Next slide, please. The survey is available in 24 languages and counting. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and at the end, each survey taker receives a personalized one-page scorecard comparing their well-being score to all other survey takers. These scorecards, I hope you will agree, are great for sparking conversations about how well-being is defined and how it can be measured and what might be done to strengthen deficient scores, deficient domains. And in the same way that we have these individual scorecards, we can generate destination and community scorecards. Next slide, please. Now, for me as a tourism planner, this gets especially interesting when we stack the scores from low to high. We can use this simple one-page scorecard to say, if tourism is a vehicle for development and an engine of local change, how should it be developed to strengthen these deficient domains on the left? What policies and interventions would host communities like to see implemented in these deficient areas to strengthen destination well-being and the sustainability of World Heritage management? In short, our approach aligns with the UN SDGs and is focused on engaging host communities and all destination stakeholders in conversations about destination well-being and sustainability. To conclude, we have this short video which summarizes and nicely illustrates our approach. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for your wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise through this project. Uh, your presentation is about community-based action in relation to the quality of life, which include happiness and well-being. I think this approach sounds very inspiring under this circumstance. Under this circumstance, for example, in the face of this COVID situation. So if anyone would like to ask, about this project, would like to know about the further information, and please put your sticky note to add on our mirror board, or leave your comments in the Zoom chat box. We will definitely share, these comments and questions with Paul. And Paul, maybe you might wish to, reply, later of our, session. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'd like to invite our third speaker, Dr. Ester van Steekelenburg from iDiscover Hong Kong, and Ms. Sameeha Sheth from Center for Innovative Development, Ahmedabad. So we will be hearing about iDiscover Ahmedabad voicing untold narratives. Okay, Dr. Steekelenburg, Ms. Sheth, the floor is yours.
So I'm Sameeha. I'm an architect urban planner based in Ahmedabad and a founder of ICID. And we have Dr. Ester van Steekelenburg. She's a heritage specialist and a tourism planner. And we did this project in Ahmedabad. We initiated the journey in 2018, and we'll like to share this with you briefly. Now I think I'll start with the presentation. So so here is the journey of iDiscover Ahmedabad. We used to call it Beyond Cultural Heritage. So there is there are many layers, and we try to unfold one after the other in terms of tangibility, intangibility, cultural significance, and all of that. And therefore, it is voicing untold stories because there are so many things that goes unnoticed or undocumented, and that is what we try to do through this project. So Ahmedabad is actually one of the only cities in the country of India to be listed as World Heritage City since 2017, and it is a city which has great tangibilities in terms of forts and gates and temples and mosques, and more than 20 heritage sort of precincts of national importance, and more than 4,000 ancient neighborhoods which are between 200 to 600 years old, because the city was established in 1411. But with that, what comes is the complexities of heritage management, or really understanding heritage, where one is there is a lack of awareness, there is social tension, there is also lot of loss of authenticity, and in a lot of ways disconnect, and all of that leads to gentrification. And therefore, for heritage management, all of these things need to be really brought together. So how do you bring people together? How do you work at the disconnect, and how do you really focus on intangibilities, because that is what really makes the community, and that is what really makes the city what it is, and how special that is. And all these precincts, how special that can be, is only if the heritage management is done in a proper way. And through our project, what we try to do is to try and bring all the people together from all walks of life, all economic diversity, kids, women, um, low-income neighborhoods, higher-income neighborhoods, professionals, and all of that coming together for heritage management and for the love of their own city. And as I said, the whole this project was, we were just like someone who would do. We were just doers, but at the same time, we had very great stakeholders, and we call them stakeholders is because without them, this could not have happened. And this includes site custodians, which is the government, the people who really have the onus of doing anything in the city. Then we have community leaders. We had people, doctors and business owners and all of that from the community who really helped and had the same sort of value and understanding of heritage and wanted to do something for the city. Then we had creative and tourism industries, which also included media professionals, hoteliers, restaurant people, and all of that, who really also not only thrives on heritage and tourism, but also has deep intentions of making it better and enhancing it. And last but not the least, our funding agencies. We had Prince Claus Fund and British Council backing us on this for last 2 years on every step of the way, whether it was documenting, whether it was making an application, whether it was bringing people together, whether it was working with kids or women. So that is, these projects would not have happened. And we, which is Esther and I, were only doers or rather implementers at, amongst all of these people. Yes, and now I think we'll move on to the deep sort of detailed methodology as to how this happened and what all we did and what all we achieved. Thank you. Esther, up to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sameeha. Great. So the next slide. So as Sameeha explained, that was kind of building the foundation, getting everyone on board was probably the hardest bit of the project. When we actually got going, I'm now going to share with you what the project actually constituted of. So at iDiscover, we have built a methodology that comprises of 6 steps, whereby, as Sameeha rightly said, we are just the facilitators. The whole process is community-led. And what the community is going to do is they are going to map and tell and share the stories of their own neighborhood, focusing more on the intangible aspects of heritage than the tangibles. And we go through this step-by-step process whereby we first kind of reveal the neighborhood narrative. I mean, what makes the neighborhood special? What is it all about? You saw some snippets in the clip of that process. It was very low-key. It was in the neighborhoods. We managed to get a lot of women and children to participate, which was quite extraordinary because they kind of, especially the women, usually just stay in their house. We got them to map the sites that matter most to them, places to eat, to play, to pray, places that they feel connected to. We then worked with a lot of local creatives, illustrators, writers, journalists, photographers, to create, based on those stories, to create content that was worth sharing. We got an illustrator to make a beautiful map that you see here on the slides for these 2 neighborhoods. And then we used IT to share those stories. So we did that 2 ways. So we brought the stories first back to the community itself. And there you see that lovely picture on the right, whereby it was a unique kind of occasion of people coming together that would normally never meet. And we were kind of sharing those stories through words, through visuals. And then they were also shared through an app. And that app is basically more targeted towards a younger digitally connected audience. In the process, we mapped more than 80 cultural sites. We distributed more than 1,000 maps. We created 2 trails in these neighborhoods. But then when we got to the end and we kind of looked back on it, we realized that the value wasn't even so much in the product, in the IT product. The value was much more in actually going through that process and using that to empower the community. So that's the next slide. And what you can see here is on the top are these problems that Sameeha introduced that we see not only in Ahmedabad, but in many urban heritage sites. At the bottom, we see our process, so the mapping and the storytelling. And what we see on the right is actually what we think is truly the impact of a process like this. It was an immense boost for local pride, an immense boost for cultural awareness, for sense of belonging. People suddenly realized that by seeing what was very ordinary for them displayed in something as cool as a digital app, as something suddenly being extraordinary. The app can also be used as a real tool to kind of to promote the local creative cultural industry in these neighborhoods. And it kind of, I think most importantly, it built a bridge between the city leadership and kind of the local residents. I really think it was for the first time ever that these, you know, the people who really kind of rule the city, the leadership, actually made it down into the neighborhood and used this, used our IT tool as a process to start creating change and give locals an agency in what is the management of their heritage site. So the final slide is, I think what is important to note is that this is not a problem that is, or these problems are not just in Ahmedabad, they're actually in all urban heritage sites. The iDiscover methodology linked with the publishing format through the IT app can help to make the kind of the historic urban landscape approach implementable on a local level. So in a way, it's a way to crowdsource information and bring it to a bigger audience. And I think the biggest compliment in the end we got from Professor Neil of Ahmedabad University. He said this statement that you see here on the screen, that in the management of World Heritage Site, community and communications are super important. And he felt that this project had done exactly that. Now, this app is already live, and we are, Sameeha and myself are constantly trying to find avenues to keep adding content to this app, not just in Ahmedabad, maybe also other heritage cities around the world. So with that, I want to give it back to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sameeha and Ester, for your wonderful presentation about this, practical and accessible, IT solution for inclusive management and understanding and branding, heritage cities as a whole, in particular in collaboration with, wider, local communities. This is really wonderful, initiative, wonderful project. So like other, presentations, this presentation is also laid out on the mirror. So everyone is welcome to leave your comment or question. So we are going to share those, comments with our, presenters, after this session. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the last presenter. Now I would like to invite our last speaker, Ms. Milena Ivkovic, Creative Director of Block 74. We will be hearing from Milena, Project My Goa. So Milena, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much for this opportunity to shortly present the My World Heritage Goa submission for this competition. I think this is a great cue for us to start with just after Ahmedabad, because Goa is also one of the World Heritage sites in India, also one of the oldest World Heritage sites. And as you may know, the main heritage corpus in Goa is our churches and monasteries of Old Goa town. But before I go into some of the, let's say, challenges and solutions that we have proposed in this short pitch, let me just tell you something about the team behind My World Heritage Goa. I have to say that all the three partners in this creative projects are not academic, so that's maybe a little bit unusual for this crowd. My background is architecture and urban planning, but I'm also a web developer for the civic participation and digital civic participation. For this project, I work together with a beautiful local collective of digital artists based in Goa and based in Mumbai, the Bus Ride Lab, who are highly specialized in AR, VR, and all kind of digital artistry. I will explain and show their work a little bit later. And our third partner in this project is Unicity. Unicity is international advisory on the in the area of urban development and urban economy and connected to urban heritage renewal. So when we first get our heads together about this particular competition and what are the problems with let's say, heritage renewal, in particular in Goa, which we have heard from our local partner, the Bus Ride Lab, but also some of the challenges that we have heard already during this great webinar is how do we really preserve the heritage, both from climate change, so let's say from the natural induced factors which are eroding the old monuments, but also how do we prevent the cultural heritage from, let's say, modern plagues like unorganized urbanization or land encroachment, area overcrowding, etc. So we have really a combination of a lot of negative factors coming together and kind of endangering these beautiful historical narratives. On the other side, as we also have seen in many of the submissions, reconnecting with a community which lives around and in the World Heritage Site is extremely important. And one of the missing pieces when we talk about reconnecting the community is how can we better facilitate this connection of the community with, let's say, formal planning processes which are set to protect the certain heritage area. And also, how can we reconnect the community with planning processes which are happening around the heritage area? So they are really maybe not directly connected with the monument itself, but they have great influence in how the city or how the area around this monument is developing and indirectly influencing it. Can we go to the next slide, please? So right now, as I said, there is a very strong presence already of some kind of cultural protection activism in the Goa creative community. And especially the digital arts community is very active. And a lot of projects that they initiate, and one of our partners, the Bus Ride Lab, initiates a lot of these kind of raising awareness projects through using the VR and AR to reconstruct the endangered monuments. So there is a lot of local knowledge, and there is also a lot of campaigns produced already. And there is also a quite powerful local skills in using the digital tools to create the let's say the new way of learning about your heritage, which is completely based on a digital experience. What we are trying to do, and then let's go to the next slide. What we were trying to do with this idea pitch for this particular competition is the basic idea was to actually reuse this existing digital material to build the awareness upon. Because what we have seen, there is a lot of loose initiatives that are somehow not connected. They're all more or less addressing the right problems, but they need a better agency, let's say. So our idea with My Heritage Goa was to establish a platform for one of the churches of which are in the protected complex of churches and monasteries of Goa, the Church of Bom Jesu, which is one of the biggest, let's say, tourist attractors in that whole complex, and to try to make actually a better advocacy platform to protect the church and to better include the communities living around this monument and kind of make them also stakeholders in the development of that monument. One of the questions that been presented for this Globinar was, how do we think that this particular approach of, let's say, making a special platform to connect the local artists and the local digital producers with the planning authorities and with the communities is, as I say, the approach can be disseminated to similar sites, because in a lot of cities which are World Heritage or containing World Heritage monuments, there is really a lot of power already existing. There are a lot of resources already existing. The trick is how to use these resources and to make a better engagement, digital engagement platform. And we have seen that social media can be a very powerful tool for that. And the platform has to display the heritage values in an immersive way. But we would also like to have this platform as a kind of connector between the participatory urban planning process, which goes around the heritage monument. I'm not going to go deeper into some of the details of the project. This is just a very quick overview. And we are really now at the initial stage of developing, and we're going further with the bus ride collective to try to get a bit more of the funding and support for this. But again, this whole process from the Our World Heritage competition has been very much valuable for us to kind of see what are the other projects that have been submitted and what are the issues and how are they addressed using digital tools. So thank you so much for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to present and to tell a little bit more about the initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Milena, for your great presentation about, exploring potentials on the reuse of, digital heritage resources in order to, facilitate to reconnect communities as one of the good, feasible, approaches for heritage planning process, something like that. And thank you very much. As I said, Milena's presentation is also, is laid out on our Miro board. So please leave your comment or questions, and we will, get back to you after get any, reply or further explanation from Milena later. Okay. Finally, we came to the end part of our presentation. Due to time constraint, we will not be able to have a Q&A session now. However, as I said, we will of course share your comments with our speakers and try to forward you their answers and reply. I'd like to say thank you once again to the presenters for the inspiring and interesting talk, and to the audience for your active participation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
ग्लोबिनार 1.0 एक बहुत ही एक्साइटिंग इवेंट था। दुनिया के अलग अलग देशों से हम सब इसका हिस्सा बने और अपने जैसे उन सब लोगों से मिले जो कि विश्व विरासत के संरक्षण का काम कर रहे हैं।
Never before have we seen a global conference self-led by the community and for the community across vast differences in geography and time.
Credo che uno dei concetti più importanti messi in evidenza dalla webinar sia quello di connessione.
Doing 4 events throughout time zone, I felt that I was traveling across the world. connecter différentes personnes et personnalités vivant dans différentes régions et zones géographiques et qui donc ont en partage la passion pour le patrimoine, pour la conservation et pour un patrimoine durable.
We all have same issues, same problems, and same opportunities to collectively make a real difference of how technology can work for World Heritage and their host communities.
On the Globinar, I sort of got the feeling that my voice would be heard. Every discussion was a lesson. How we can cooperate. If we manage to work together, we can change a lot of things.
Todos unidos como uma só equipe. E nada melhor do que pensar nos próximos passos, no futuro e na inovação, todos juntos em evento.
استعمال التكنولوجيات الحديثة مثل الليدار هذا يفيد جدا لمتابعة وصيانة وإدارة المواقع الموجودة في قائمة التراث العالمي الثقافي والطبيعي.
This technology supports the preservation of our precious heritage in highest detail and best possible data quality.
Esse é o futuro. Na verdade, o futuro vai ser construído dessa forma.
이는 세상과 함께하는 일에는 세상의 다양한 문화를 접하고 서로 배울 수 있을 뿐만 아니라 함께하여야 이룰 수 있는 일이 있기 때문입니다.
I am energized by the passion in the discussion and I'm thrilled by the possibilities that are on the horizon.
This kind of Globinar should be continued.
Globinar OWH yabakodu yamayenzido akameyentumanken yinchichi mwa yentumanshasi.
My expectations for the next Globinar is consolidate and enlarge the network.
Cómo esta red global sigue creciendo y cómo nuestras discusiones se convierten en acciones concretas que favorezcan nuestro patrimonio mundial.
각자의 지식과 경험을 나누어 지속 가능한 발전의 네트워크를 마련해 봅시다.
On Saturday, April 10th, we reach the next step of this global discussion. Join us to build effective and focused policy recommendations for our world heritage.
Don't sure it you know anantim. Prior ka ebusioku nyinara nyimsifo nyinara bum owara umbrete.
See you soon.
Hasta pronto.
Now I'm going to move on to the next agenda, information technology policy and the toolkit presentation. We will be hearing about the two presentations here. One is about the policy report status, and the other one is about a toolkit. So for the first part of the presentation, I'd like to invite Mr. Divay Gupta, one of our co-anchors of session 1, to talk about the policy report status. Divay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Hyeseung. As I said in my introduction, that one of the major outcomes or expected outcomes of this initiative is a policy document. And from the last Globinar, we got a recommendation of preparing more of a toolkit. So I think they go hand in hand. The policy is feeding into the toolkit, and a lot of information that we are collecting through experts and emerging professionals like yourself is also feeding back into the policy. So the whole initiative mainly is focusing on involving the communities and citizens and having a more equity in the World Heritage, which will mainly involving the civil society groups, all the scholars, to be able to actively participate in managing our World Heritage better, and mainly in their monitoring as well as in their interpretation. This particular initiative has been designed or has an objective to protect and conserve both cultural and natural heritage sites for their global importance. And we would like to mobilize the global network such as this to renew the World Heritage Convention with more active participation of the civil society and other interested stakeholders. And mainly the idea of our theme is to be able to build a robust global network. And thankfully, with a series of our initiatives of Globinar, the international competition, this is slowly growing. It started with just about 10-15 people, and now, like Mario mentioned, that in the last webinar we had a lot of people, and slowly this is becoming more of a movement, and a large network is growing on this. And through this network, we would like to discuss, take everybody's inputs on how we are able to or use the potential of the information and digital technologies for both monitoring, preserving, as well as presenting the World Heritage Sites. So these were the main outcomes of the Globinar 1. We had about 900 registrants from 91 countries, from 6 continents. There are about 125 speakers with 12 anchors, 29 moderators, several technical as well rapporteur supports, and we use 3 supports. So this sort of shows the world map in red where all the participants came from. And a lot of those moderators, anchors, as well as participants are the same, showing their continued interest in this theme and initiative. So we thank everyone on that one. As you can see, Globinars like this requires a lot of effort, both at the front and the back end. And this also feeds in a lot into the policy document from various diverse group of people and stakeholders. So these are sort of our timelines. We started in November with the launch of the webinar. Then the competition was launched. In January, there was the first Globinar that we had, as well as there was the deadline for the submission of the competition. The February, we shortlisted, and we are going to be announcing them in this particular webinar towards the end. As far as the policy goes, there were certain recommendations that were done. Policy framework was prepared based on the first Globinar, and the first draft policy we hope to have it ready so that that could be discussed further and presented for wider comments. And this is mainly the team which is working on this, which, as you can see, we have a lot of diverse people, both geographically in terms of expertise. The policy team is headed by Christiana, and it's anchored by Laurie, and we have inputs from Mario, Haifa, which are also the committee members of this initiative, as we have emerging professionals like Komal, Ona and Peace, Danielle, Rashmi, and we also have experts like Carmelo, Naz, Fino, as well as myself, who are supporting this initiative. So mainly the framework for the IT theme report has been worked out in 4 sections. First is the introduction, which mainly give the background of this initiative and what are our intents and objectives. The second is what we are hearing and what are the various considerations and expectations that are arising from the debates that is happening as part of these Globinars and our meetings, including the submissions from the competition. And based on these discussions, we are also compiling the various contributions of the IT into the World Heritage. And a lot of information was derived out of the competition entries, which had a huge diverse and different various technologies and tools and techniques were demonstrated, as you saw in some of the presentation on working on World Heritage. And then based on maybe discussions today in the breakout room, we hope that we'll be able to take certain further steps to advance these particular themes, and also come up with certain aspects on how we can improve, how we can integrate more IT aspects in the monitoring and interpretation of our World Heritage. So for this particular one, we are mainly focusing on the toolkit, how to equip the site managers, provide them with some sort of guidance for their better understanding on use of technology for conservation or monitoring or present this World Heritage. We would like the participants to recommend what sort of tools and techniques they use, what is their deciding factors to do them, what are the characteristics they look for those tools, or for that matter, even if there are aspects related to capacity buildings for using those particular tools, or there are issues of data management or big data, how do they manage, what are the decision-making processes that goes in for them to decide the use of IT in their World Heritage. And I think the various inputs from the keynote speakers and the competition results, as well as breakout session discussions, will feed back into these aspects, into both the toolkit and then perhaps eventually into the policy as well. So the breakout room discussions, like I said, that the three main emerging aspects of the policy as well as the toolkits are the capacity building needs, what are the existing capacities, what sort of capacity are required for IT use, both in terms of high tech, low tech, or combination, what sort of networks, collaborations, cooperations are possible, like we saw in some of our keynote speeches on various collaborations on transboundary or nature-culture connections, for how we can learn from each other. Then, of course, several of the people, the second theme, are already aware of some of the tools, but some tools people are innovating, using their several tools, like the competition presentations we saw in terms of the diverse use of even simpler technologies like AV or apps or GIS in both monitoring and interpretation. So how those tools and techniques could be used, what are the various best practices, innovation, challenges that are being created. We would like to hear that as well. So that could also be discussions in the breakout room. Then, of course, the technology of IT also creates large amount of data. Plus, there is a large amount of data already available. How we can source it, how we can manage it. There are some ethical issues with it. There are some technical issues as well with it. So how these things can be reconciled, and who keeps it, how safe it is. Several aspects of these also needs to be discussed, so that we can, again can make these things as part of our both as in the toolkit as well as in the policy. So the breakout room discussions for the toolkit, we would also like to hear from you on what are the aspects that you're really looking at. The idea of having a toolkit is a guiding document, perhaps a web resource itself. So what are the various characteristics as a participant, as a user, or as maybe a technologist or a provider or a vendor, you would really look at? What are your deciding aspects? Is it the cost? Is it the ease? Is it the portability or security? There could be several. What are those aspects we would like to understand from you? In the next step, we would like to analyze these discussions and then maybe organize a whole catalog of tools, maybe certain decision-making matrices, so that one can be guided on what are the pros and cons of each tools, on apps or data sourcing. If there are levels of training and capacity buildings that are required for some things. And then finally, we would like to prepare a report on this particular theme, which can eventually feed into the policy as the final outcome of this initiative, which can be then presented to the various forums for maybe including maybe even the World Heritage Committee for them to consider its inclusion within their processes. So we are not really looking at this as one of the means and the ends. I think we would like this dialogue and engagement to continue, and even not only in this year, but beyond 2001. We would like to, I mean, like I said, that once the global report is ready as a draft, we would like to continue this dialogue and have a debate in 2021, maybe on a platform like this or elsewhere. Perhaps you would also like to also explore possibilities how this initiative, which has taken these green shoots, can continue perhaps as an e-platform, which then again could be an interactive web resource or repository on which people can both contribute and also benefit. They could be in the capacity buildings, in certain tutorials that can be shared if you had benefited, certain case studies. So we would like these initiatives to grow organically. And thankfully, the technology today enables us to be able to have those opportunities and platforms. So, and now we would like to have a poll, which I think Hyeseung will do it, to understand, like I said, the various characteristics of the open source data. There are 7 of them that we had thought of. You can rate them from 1 to 7, and Hyeseung will explain you more details on that. Hyeseung?
So like, other poll we did in the introduction, we are going to launch one poll for the policy. Our colleague Joe, he already, posted the link in the Zoom chat. Please access and please try to move around to make a link 1, 2, 3, something like that. So we'll give you just 1 minute to complete your answer. And after this, we are going to continue to our agenda by inviting our second presenter, Komal. Thank you very much. Okay, it's done. So we complete this polling. Thank you very much, Divay. Thank you. We'll move on to the second presentation. I'd like to welcome our speaker, Ms. Komal Potdar, who is a part of the policy committee of IT theme of our World Heritage Initiative. Will be speaking to us a little more details about Toolkit. What is the Toolkit for the World Heritage Site? Komal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hyeseung, and thank you, Divay, for giving the detailed explanation on policy. And I think the poll has actually opened up the different valuations or different perspectives of the audience that we have here. I'm going to touch upon how we are building this toolkit, where we are, and how we are going ahead, and what is the aim of today's discussion. Next slide, please. So we saw in the keynote presentations and the competition presentations today the immense value of IT and in the World Heritage context, and how collaborations can lead to good results and practices. Based on the Globinar discussions, the policy document is under construction, and the vision is to mainly providing a theoretical framework and a set of guidelines for innovative practices. The toolkit that we are designing is a supplementary practical framework to promote the use of IT for conservation, monitoring, interpretation, and networking and capacity building processes. So the vision is to create an open access learning platform by bringing together information and making it user-friendly, evergreen source of information, and dynamic. Since technology, we all know that is constantly updated, we need the real-time information to avoid redundancy and be accessible to different technical know-how and resources. This is acknowledged in the design of this toolkit. Next slide, please. So in the last webinar, we shared a draft six-part policy framework based on what we heard in the discussions, and we asked for your feedback. So currently the policy framework has 6 key parts of IT characteristics required for effective monitoring, effective presentation, effective sharing of data and information, sustainable approaches in managing IT systems, capacity building of IT, and supporting intersectoral collaborations. Next slide, please. For this particular Globinar, we are focusing on 3 key areas as a short-term plan to build the policy document, which Divay explained, and the toolkit that we are designing. So here we are focusing on the 3 key elements of capacity building and networking, tools in monitoring and interpretation, and data management, open source data. These 3 types that we think are more important to build this toolkit for a short-term goal. And the breakout rooms today that we have prepared and organized is to invite you to give your opinions and inputs on these 3 key elements of how to design the toolkit, which the poll was the first snapshot of what we saw. Next slide, please. So within the ambit of World Heritage Convention, innovative tools, softwares, applications are being practiced, like we saw in the keynote presentations, to achieve better results for monitoring and interpretation. Here we want to bring individuals and practitioners, site managers, civil society to discuss how to use IT and enhance the monitoring and presentation of World Heritage sites. The goal is to promote innovative solutions through e-learning, bring together professionals to inspire the discourse, and provide up-to-date information as well as practical knowledge to stakeholders with different contexts. Next one. So here, there is information on various platforms, and professional organizations are working towards it. However, this IT toolkit aims to create and collate all information data, which is available from various sources on one hub, and prepare a catalog like a one-stop solution for stakeholders who want to enhance their practices by use of IT. This is like a peer learning process where, as per the requirements of state parties and suggestions of the World Heritage recommendations, the toolkit can be accessed to achieve better results. Next one. So as mentioned here, we are focusing on 3 key elements, which is networking, data management, and the toolkit practices and monitoring. Next one. Today, we also invite different potential key audiences. It's not only the academia, but also World Heritage practitioners. So this is particularly to invite different stakeholders and get a holistic perspective on how to manage World Heritage sites. So we have technology partners, we have communities, we have the business and industry sectors, and interested individuals in the process of World Heritage management and preparing this toolkit. Next one. So today, the Globinar 2.0 consultations, the main aim is to invite you all to contribute to the process of building this toolkit and policy. So potentially we organize the preliminary catalog, apps, data sources, training opportunities, and use of characteristics, and to describe to them. And you will see this when I explain the other breakout rooms. And here, we have organized these breakout rooms to gather information to decide which characteristics of tools are important with various perspectives, and how the toolkit can provide useful to the users, which we saw in the poll. Next one. So I'll quickly explain how the breakout rooms are designed for today. So we have organized 3 core topics, which is capacity building, networking, tools in monitoring and interpretation, and data management. So these are the main tools that we want to have in our toolkits. And secondly, we want to consider from your point of view as a site manager or a professional, what characteristics would be most useful and and what would help you decide the use of toolkits. So we are offering you top characteristics of each toolkit, and we want you to give your inputs on how easy are they to use, how accessible they are, and what is your opinion about them if you have used it in your professional practices. Next one. So the breakout room 1 is for networking and capacity building. Here the core questions are: what samples of online training resources and tutorials have you used in your practice, and would you recommend them? And what, as per you, are the challenges and advantages that you have encountered during the use of these tools? And if you know any other training resources and online tutorials that you have utilized for the purpose of monitoring purposes, would you recommend them? And how are their advantages? What are the advantages and challenges in use of these tools? Next one, please. So we want your inputs, like if you're aware of such training modules, for example, the International Training Course on Disaster Risk Management. So they provide online training and which is offered every year and which is very useful for site managers all over the world. If you are aware of such training modules, we would like to invite you in the breakout rooms and give your opinions and the way you have used it to build this toolkit. Next one. So we have listed down the few top characteristics which we think are the key. However, you can also give your inputs on this if you have encountered as you use it. For example, top characteristics of networking would be the institutions who are organizing. They should be affordable and accessible, offered in local languages so that it is useful for all people, all stakeholders from around the world. They should have standardized and customizable use for target audiences. The tutorials about monitoring and interpretation should be offered. And of course, because we are talking about World Heritage Conventions, standard terminology should be used. Next one. So the breakout room is particularly for the tools in monitoring and interpretation. Here, we want to know from you which sample digital apps for monitoring have you used and which are the most useful and what are the advantages and challenges of using these apps. Second question that we want to answer is that the sample apps for digital interpretation and storytelling, and how are they useful in the process of interpretation, and how can they support multiple narratives and diverse voices? Some of the examples we saw in our competitions, and we want you to also suggest some of these digital monitoring or interpretation storytelling apps. Next one. For example, we are aware of monitoring apps such as the Google Street View and another interpretation app such as the Kula platform. I'm sure we have a number of audiences and the professionals who have worked on multiple apps. So we would like to invite you to breakout room 2 to give inputs on these toolkits. Next one. We have listed down top characteristics of these toolkits, which are interactive, innovative, mostly community-based, which are inclusive for local and diverse languages. It should be affordable and practical, holistic, and capacity to integrate different types of databases, and also standard terminologies within the UNESCO Convention. Next one, please. The third breakout room is targeting data management and open source data. So here we want you to know, as we saw in our keynote presentations, that how different sources of data are useful for monitoring. It's not only conservation, for example, in terms of climate change, we need data sets from different institutions. So we want you to tell us that how different sample open source data sets have you used in your monitoring processes, and how useful have they been? What are the challenges to access this data if they are open source or restrictive, and what are the limitations of these data sources? And also, if you would suggest how to use this data in terms of making it fair, which is easy to find the data sets, easy to access, interoperable, that is easy to use in different contexts, and how the data can be reused for various purposes. Next one, please. So we have an example of the open data source, which is the Bioparma site, which is for monitoring the biodiversity and protected areas management. And this site gives a web-based open source information of protected areas, nature-based solutions across 79 countries of the African continent. So there are multiple such platforms that you may have used or you may have encountered during your monitoring processes. So we would like to invite you to please provide us with this information, which we can include in the toolkit. Next one. Similar to the first two breakout rooms, we have listed down top characteristics. For example, if these data sets or websites for open access are built for any purpose or built for heritage management purposes, they are versatile, adaptable for needs of different site managers, use of standard languages, easy to access, and open. source data, which actually is a beneficial concept for geospatial information, which can be utilized in monitoring purposes. And also the key element here is that it has to be updated regularly, because as we all know, IT is ever evolving, so it has to be not redundant and real-time information. So next one, please. Right. So the outcome of this Globinar 2 consultations with you all is to review the discussions in the breakout rooms, to review all the inputs that we receive from our key audiences. We want to analyze these tools and the characteristics of the competition so that we can enlist the advantages, the benefits, the limitations of various tools and data sets that we receive today, and organize and create a catalog which we want to aim at the use of these toolkits and policy guidelines as a theoretical and a practical framework for our site managers, academia, experts, and industry professionals, and also give examples of how these tools have been utilized in terms of good practices on sites. Next one, please. So here we are, as Divay had mentioned about the policy tool, the policy document, we add this, the policy and the toolkit in the input of our World Heritage themes, which we have explained in our previous webinars, and to contribute to the global report and debates of 2021. So this is a continuing process which we started in November, and this will go a long way. And this is also to mobilize potential initiatives and development as a long-term concept of the e-platform. Next one, please. Right, so this was a short introduction about breakout rooms. You can also put your preferred breakout rooms on the Miro board or put it in the chat so that we can guide you to the one that you prefer. Over to you, Hyeseung.
Thank you very much, Komal, for your detailed and very much informative presentation. So we are immediately move into the panel discussion. As you can see on this slide, we will have 3 different breakout room. So can you please already we announce some of the announcement in the Zoom chat boxes already. Could you please change your name by putting the number of a panel, which panel you want to join for panel discussion, and you will stay here, this main room, and our colleague will automatically send to the panel that you want to join. So please stay here. It will take few minutes, and you will be automatically directly to the panel discussion.
The purpose, of course, of documentation and then engaging furthermore with the data. And it results that we have to differentiate tools according to the, well, on the one hand side, expert approach in data collection, but also then in a kind of low-level engagement part on the other hand, when it is how to activate communities to involve, and not only on communities, but also other experts who should be able to interpret also complicated scientific data. And so tools have to be elaborated. Of course, we talked a lot about open source. We collected some names, some technologies to demonstrate a complete pipeline. Possibly out of open source tools, but at the end it comes up to have smart interpretation at the end, which is oriented towards the needs of different user groups or communities in the sense, yes, communities or user communities. Yes, just to give a very brief summary now on the of our breakout room. I don't know where we are now. Are we already in the big panel again? So that's because that's now up to pass to whoever takes over now, the moderation.
Yes, I also would like to give a chance to 2 other moderators to deliver a closing remark. So Eugene, you would like to do?
Yes, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
So so we talked about the 3 questions, but mainly we were delving into accessibility in terms of the levels of access. Because in particular areas, you have you have military bases, and these are definitely not accessible. So there are various levels, and also some villages have, would prefer to be private and not to have the entire villages revealed to the entire world. And there are, and Case also mentioned that, particular plants have certain value that people will go to get, to obtain and to sell them if they know the location. So some data should be accessible at very, very different levels. We also talked about reusability. For example, particular data sets that are from Baidu, China's largest search engine, with a map is not purposed for heritage management, but it can be reused and repurposed for heritage management, as Anqi also mentioned. So there are a lot of challenges that we face in terms of data, because data, number one, data that is valuable is expensive to obtain. And not every institution are willing to reveal the data set very publicly for the reasons that I've talked about, but essentially because also of the value that they have. So the challenge then is, how should we arrange, how should we connect this institution in a way that can lead us to a really open access data that is useful, searchable, discoverable, accessible at different levels, that is that has interoperability in terms of the raw data that they provide, and also semantic data, interpreted data, filtered data that they also provide. But eventually, it is all these issues that we're facing in terms of data. We live in a very rich data world, but really useful data are not free. It's a fact. This is a fact. So as a global community here, how do we make that happen? How do we break away from these challenges, break the boundary of these challenges to get data to be publicly accessible? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eugene, for your recap regarding the, how to use the, open source data and how we can access this data for, useful and, way within, this field. Thank you very much. So now I'm turning over to Sujan, who was a moderator for the first breakout room. Sujan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. We had a really fantastic, lively and very informative discussion, as I'm sure all the others did from the sound of things too, on networking and capacity building. And Gemini presented to us, we really drilled Gemini around his knowledge around the capacity building resources and networks that are available. He recommended that we need to, in some ways, go back to basics. We need to look at the World Heritage capacity building strategy and work that was done. We also need to look at things like the state of conservation to really understand where those challenging areas are for people, like what are some of the areas of need around capacity building. And also we looked at networks. There's an extraordinary amount of networks around the world, and particularly in the Asia Pacific region, that we can tap into, who are looking at different areas. One that was mentioning Korea, that's starting up around interpretation. There were some comments around the fact that, finding things on digital interpretation is difficult. So having that information up there will be very useful. Also looking at, this concept of this hub, of this digital concept of bringing all of these things together in a place where people can, navigate to these different resources that are available. And ECROM was mentioned around a lot of the tools and libraries and things that they're putting online now. A lot of people are moving into this digital environment. We also spoke a little bit about some of the experiences that we had in our city, in Ballarat, around the UNESCO Historic Urban Landscape approach, and this idea around needing better integrated disciplines. Like World Heritage sites are complex. They're in complex places. We need to think about how we can learn from the different disciplines, and also, so it's not just about giving information to communities or capacity building for heritage practitioners. It's actually looking at all of the actors who play a role in World Heritage sites and the places that they exist in. And then there were some really interesting comments coming through on the chat around young people and how young people can be engaged in this way and the kinds of platforms that they can use. So there was a really rich discussion that moved in many different directions, but I think that going back to some of the basic information that's already been done, looking at the evidence in the areas of need, bringing in data experts who can help people navigate how data can be useful for the practitioners and others, and just having this hub of information that we can navigate through would be really good. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. I can really sense that you really had a fruitful discussion during your panel with experts and other participants. Okay, thank you very much once again for all the moderators for your contribution. Actually, we can manage this breakout room smoothly. We are going to close this panel by now. Before doing so, we are going to have one last poll. We are going to launch one question. We'd like to ask you to submit just one word. What did you learn today? So you can find out the link in the Zoom chat box. Please try to submit your answer, please. Thank you.
Who put Globinar 3.0?
Too early for that.
2022.
I like At the Mercy of Technology.
We are going to close the poll in 20 seconds.
Okay, that was my direct response to dealing with Calendar right now.
Okay. Okay, good. It's done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.